My aunt bought this for me for Christmas like 5 years ago, and since she sometimes watches the channel, I know she would get really mad if I didn't wear this. So, here you go, Vanessa. I hope you're happy. Hello and welcome to Current Comic Crap, the show where I take a look at things that are happening in the world of modern comics that either resonate with me or that I think are worth discussing. Today we're going to be talking about two of those things because, wow, the current Sonic the Hedgehog comic over at IDW is really good, like stupidly good for what it is, and I think it's worth talking about since there's not a lot of people that are doing it. Honestly, I was really skeptical. I never really read the previous incarnation of the Sonic the Hedgehog series, but I know it does have a whole lot of fans, and the ones that like it really, really like it. But having mostly looked at the previous series as an outsider, this one's really good. So let's talk about a bit of how we got to this point and then actually talk about the comic itself. So the Sonic the Hedgehog comic series is something that has always fascinated me. I was a big fan of the video games growing up, but I didn't actually read the comics. I mean, I read a few issues here and there, but that was mostly whenever I was able to convince my mom to buy me the comics whenever we were at the grocery store, and that was very few and far in between, so I had to kind of put together the plot in my head, which just made it, I don't know, very confusing. But it's worth noting that Sonic the Hedgehog was the longest running all-ages comic, and that was no small feat. The Sonic series over at Archie started in 1993, which was only 2 years after the release of the original game. The comics were establishing their own thing, but they also had to work in elements from other games and Sonic media that popped up over the years. And this was especially troubling since the Sonic franchise as a whole seems to go through an identity crisis every few years. There's plenty of videos on YouTube talking about why this is, and the main crux of it is that Sonic was a character that was designed to be cool, and what's cool always kind of changes. Since Sonic was designed in the 90s, he was kind of perpetually this 90s character, which didn't really work out, and he was constantly trying to reinvent himself. When you have this other weird thing where some fans were, they were around in the 90s, and some came in after the first major reworking of it with the Sonic Adventure stuff. So not only do you have problems with the 2D fans versus the 3D fans, but the entire tone and feel of Sonic the Hedgehog as a franchise is just fractured and weird. The comics, on the other hand, are just their own separate thing, and I feel like a lot of the stereotypically bad Sonic fans probably came from this particular fandom, especially with its emphasis on original characters, something that we know all about on the fan side. All of these original characters and the original creations of the comic itself managed to take on a life of their own, and their continuity turned into its own big confusing mess from an outside perspective. It also doesn't help that the original Sonic comic had the whole Ken Penders situation, which led to a DC Comics Crisis-style soft reboot, which certainly didn't help make things any easier to understand. Honestly, that is a dedicated video that I eventually want to make, so I'm not going to dive into it here. If you really want to know more, then there's a lot of videos and articles on the internet that you can find. It's also really fascinating that Archie Comics itself had a lot going on behind the scenes, and they ended up losing the Sonic license because of it, which is really, really weird considering that the Sonic property was one of their biggest cash cows they had going for them, since before the big major reboot of the Archie franchise, Riverdale and all of that, their namesake wasn't really resonating with a modern audience, and they were losing a lot of sales because of it. So even though Archie lost the Sonic license, it was picked up and a new comic continuity was started over at IDW. It's really cool because IDW's Reboot had the exact same creative team that was working on the Archie series. So if you liked all of that, then it wouldn't really feel like much of a betrayal whenever you just hop over to the brand new Sonic comics. Not only does it have a very similar look, but the writing, the tone, everything, because it's literally the exact same people. In my personal opinion, this was probably one of the greatest things to ever happen to the Sonic continuity in the comics, because now the core Sonic lore was already established by the video game franchise, and the new comic continuity was able to be a bit more grounded because of it. Also, after 2 decades of seeing what works and doesn't work with a Sonic comic book universe, the team is able to have a much better plan for what the series should look like. I know that I've spent pretty much this entire video just talking about how we got up to the IDW comic line, punch, but I really feel like that is kind of necessary when looking at this. Now, this series has one issue with each of the main partner characters to start with, which helps establish their personality and their dynamic with Sonic as the lead character. Even though this is a brand new continuity, they're kind of expecting that you know at least a little bit about Sonic the Hedgehog and his supporting cast. They allude to some previous war that wasn't in the games, but it adds a little bit of mystery since you want to know what happened, what's going on here, and you get little hints and small details of backstory that you would actually see in Marvel and DC comics when referencing the past. So it has a bit more of conventional comic storytelling because of it, something that I personally really enjoy as a massive comic book fan. So after Sonic is done with his one-issue solo romps with the different characters, they all come together and it has a very Power Rangers feel, which I really enjoy. I know that Sonic gets a lot of flack for all of the different animal friends and companions, stuff like that, but it really actually works here. Now, I don't want to spoil things too much, but one thing that I probably do need to say is that, at least right now in the continuity, Eggman/Dr. Robotnik is actually not the main antagonist. That role ends up going to Metal Sonic. Yeah, there's a little bit of a bait and switch there, so sorry, small spoiler, but it's worth talking about because it's really fun. Metal Sonic actually has a personality now, which is something he pretty much didn't have in the games, and it works extremely well. Some of these fight scenes with Metal Sonic kind of just feel like they're straight out of Dragon Ball Z. They're very fast paced, which works really well for a series that has been known to have an emphasis on speed. I also really like all of the small details that are pulled right from the source material that this comic has, such as the Extreme Gear boards from Sonic Riders. It's just a cute little touch. They didn't need to do that. There's plenty of ways for them to travel. They didn't need to pull out these kick-ass hoverboards from a mediocre game. It's cute though. It's really rewarding if you have been keeping up with the Sonic franchise as a whole. You'll notice a lot of little bits and details. I like that a lot. Now, it is worth noting that at the time of this recording, there's only 10 issues that are out. And while the series does have some original characters, it's not ludicrously overboard like the previous comic series. Even then though, I actually really like the new characters, especially Whisper. She's a warrior that uses a lot of powers that are granted by those wisps from the Sonic Colors game. I thought it was neat. It's actually fun. She has a cool character design and a pretty decent gimmick where she whispers. Hence the name. Most importantly though, the plot details can only get you so far. The big reason that I enjoy this book so much is because it is a very feel-good time. These days, a lot of the comics that I'm actively excited to pick up are ones that are legitimately fun to read and leave me feeling good. I think that's a feeling that the comic book medium really shines in, and I'm glad the industry has been trending more and more that way these days, much to the chagrin of self-proclaimed alpha males. Look, if the book is fun to read, that's kind of the most important thing. While this is my literal job, comics are a form of entertainment. I really feel like these days, for a lot of different mediums, we really just consume and consume and consume just for the sake of consumption, to be doing something. There are plenty of times where I've been playing a video game where it stopped being fun and I'm just grinding to get to some arbitrary goal, or I'm binge watching a show and while I am enjoying it, I'm not able to pay attention and actually process things as well as I did whenever I first sat down and watched maybe like 2 or 3 episodes. Whenever I'm 16 episodes in, I don't know, I just naturally start losing focus. Something my grandpa told me when I was growing up is that if you were spending your limited free time doing something that doesn't make you happy, then why are you bothering with this? It's something that I've been really trying to come to terms with because I am reading pretty much every main comic that's coming out in the industry on a week-to-week basis because it is my job. But I still have little flashbacks to whenever I was enjoying comic books as a hobby. I really feel like I would drop more books if I didn't have this career. However, the Sonic comic and how good it makes me feel every time I pick it up really does make me think that even if this was just my hobby again, this is still something that I would read. So that's my recommendation if that's something that sounds interesting to you. I've never really considered myself a hardcore Sonic fan, and yes, I do understand the irony of that while I'm literally sitting here in a Sonic onesie. But it's really cool to see some Sonic media outside of the video game franchise that is doing well. I heard that the Sonic Boom cartoon is alright. I never watched it, so I can't really speak to the quality of it. But I'm really glad that this ended up working out. I was a little bit skeptical going in, and I don't know, I'm just happy to say that it won me over. Good books are good books, and that really is what's important. The writing's good, the art's good. It's a good, feel-good time. Good. So if you haven't already read the book, I don't know, go pick it up. There's not a lot of series outside of Marvel and DC in the comic space that get a lot of attention, so if I can shine a spotlight on something that made me happy, I feel like I'm doing my job. But before we get out of here, I want to give a big thank you to all of you guys, everybody who subscribed, watched, my Patreon supporters, all of you guys. You make this job worth doing, and I don't know if you can tell by the bags under my eyes, but it has been a long and stressful past couple months. And the kind words that I get from you guys in the comments and everywhere else, it means a lot, and it's what keeps me going. I know that being a YouTuber seems pretty exciting and happy from the outside perspective, but it's just the mask we put on to pretend like we have a soul. I just wanted to say thank you in the spirit of it being close to Thanksgiving, at least at the time of this recording. So, thanks. But if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing or even watching another one? In fact, I had a video a few months ago whenever the original Sonic the Hedgehog comic was ending, and I brought my good friend Chris on board who really loved the old school comic, and he gave his thoughts as to why it was so good. So, if that's fascinating to you, then, I don't know, maybe go watch that. But anyway, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.